Navy Matters.
Hello and welcome to History Repeats. I'm your host, Liam Carballal, and joining me once more is Richard Acritelli. What's up, Richard?
Liam, how you doing? Good to see you.
Yeah, good. How's your summer been so far?
Good. Busy.
Yeah.
I built a military history museum out in Suffolk County.
Oh, yeah.
And it's called the VFW Post 6249, Suffolk County World War II Military History Museum. So I just connected with a local guy who had two massive pictures of Teddy Roosevelt that we're going to be putting into our edition. So it was like
American War. Yeah.
So it was good to get that artwork from a local president and Medal of Honor recipient and citizen. That's like one of our strongest citizens here on Long Island.
Yeah. Roosevelt Field Mall is actually named after Quinton Roosevelt. It used to be an airfield, and it was named after him after he got shot down.
Roosevelt Field. Yep. So
I think it was a training accident. Yeah. So, Richard, today I was hoping we could talk about the end of the war, specifically the end of the war in Asia, since it's fast becoming the 80th anniversary of the end of the war. We just had the 80th anniversary of the attacks on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So, what do you think? Do you think Truman had to nuke Hiroshima? Do you think that?
Yeah. In terms of what was the cost of the bomb? About $3 billion, right?
Yeah.
And its use comes here from Long Island at the start of World War II with Albert Einstein and the FBI, and kind of FDR responded to Einstein saying, all right, get your friends together and we have to get ahead of this, because it was concerns that the Germans and everyone else was far ahead of us because we were coming out of the Great Depression and isolationism and so on. It was the ferocity of the war that you're going to see.
When was the last Japanese soldier to surrender? Like 1970 something?
Yeah, 30 years later. They're on islands in the Philippines. Yeah. And that island hopping campaign kind of dictated that those guys got stuck, because we might not go into those islands, but they got starved out, and the Japanese couldn't reach their own men, and they were scattered all over the place. It's a tough thing to say with such a quick yes, but Truman said it himself. How am I supposed to look into the eyes of American parents and say, I had this weapon, I could have ended this war a lot sooner? Yeah. And I think the casualties and they don't know for sure, right? But it was about 200,000 Americans. And you got to remember, even though we're talking about Japan now, the war was tough for us in Europe. Yeah. That just ends in May, right? 1945. Yeah. Now there were actually European, American soldiers in the European theater of operations who were told now they were going to shift over towards the Pacific.
That's got to be a morale destroyer right there.
And you got to think, like Americans were starting to get tired of the war. Could have we kept going? Yes, definitely. But were Americans starting to get tired? Yes. And you're dealing with an enemy that even up until this point, 80 years ago, they weren't surrendering. No. And their backs were completely up against the wall. And they were going to keep on going, even though they did not have control of the air, their own sea lanes. And then with the Potsdam Conference, right, with the declaration there, was that the Soviets were going to come in. They were going to be in there pretty quick, within a month.
Manchuria, Hokkaido.
Manchuria, the islands there. And, one thing about Stalin, 9 out of 10 German soldiers were killed by the Soviets. Yeah. 9 out of 10 American soldiers 9 out of 10 Japanese soldiers were killed by the Americans. He wanted to gobble onto some of that territory in the Far East. And, you better believe him and his generals and, his own government said, we could grab some of these resources. We could have a little bit of a buffer. We could really kind of stick it to the Japanese. And, the interesting thing is that the Japanese and the Soviet Union outside of a brief tank war, I think it was in 1939.
Yeah, Nagaman Gol.
Yeah, like up in Mongolia.
Yeah.
There was really
Kalkan-Gol.
there was no friction between them. Did they spy on each other? Yeah, sure.
In a non-aggression pact.
But it was a non-aggression, So the two of them realized that fighting against each other would just be such a monumental task. The Germans don't really realize that because 2 days after Pearl Harbor, they declare war against us.
Yeah.
Which Hitler's own generals are going to say, well, this is a nail in our coffin. Maybe not today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
But once the United States gets rolling, we're not going to be able to stop.
Yeah.
Okay, their productivity and their huge resource of soldiers.
Yeah.
Well, now the Japanese are facing, that productivity rolling. Okay, the American Marines, Army, the B-29 bombers are now within striking distance, especially after Iwo Jima and Okinawa.
Yeah.
But it was just that stubborn resistance that they just kept on going. That code of Bushido just forced the younger army officers, they carried out a coup against their own government.
Yeah.
And the emperor still waited on the sidelines, and there was friction amongst his inner circle and the higher generals. So it was a very dangerous situation, extremely dangerous. And, as you know, the Japanese government had put it out, if America invades the home islands, that they were to kill all the prisoners of war.
Jesus.
So,
know that, no?
You had prisoners of war that were held for 3 years, and they looked like, the concentration camp survivors in Europe that both sides just liberated, between the Eastern and Western Front. So it was an immensely dangerous time. There was rumors amongst American prisoners of war that they were most likely going to get killed.
Yeah.
And, Truman finds out all this information. And you got to remember, Truman's only in that seat of the presidency for 3 months?
Yeah.
Okay, 4 months. He's not there that long. And, I think it was a day after FDR had passed away, Stimson actually sits down and, briefs him on the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
And he's the vice president of the United States. Him and FDR, outside of having breakfast from time to time, they barely knew each other.
Yeah.
But, Truman was the up-and-coming senator.
Yeah.
He
only got tagged on during the 44 election.
Yeah,
It wasn't even like he was there the entire time.
And he didn't necessarily want it. He got pressured in by FDR.
Yeah.
You're the upcoming Democrat. You have a little vigor to you. We want to use your name. But, outside of being the president of the Senate, he really didn't have much to do until FDR dies. And then there's that great quote when he speaks to Eleanor Roosevelt, "What can I do for you?" She goes, "No, you're the one in trouble now. What can I do for you?" And he said, like, the moon and the stars and everything else felt like was on his shoulders.
Yeah.
And people kind of said, who the heck is Harry S. Truman? Yeah. They knew he was the vice president of the United States. But you had guys, Eisenhower, Bradley, and Patton stayed up. And they drank the night that they found out that FDR died. And, they were probably playing little cards. But they were talking about, what can we expect from this new president? Well, the new president in his own right showed decisive leadership.
He was a trench fighter in World War I.
World War I. He was a artillery. He taught himself the mathematics. He never graduated from high school. Poor Missouri farmer who never really had really good luck. He failed in business after World War I. He was an honest guy. He gets in there from the Pennacast machine in Missouri. Yep. And, I think we kind of got hurt because when you look at Yalta, FDR saying, all right, we're going to most likely win the war here, but how can we save lives, right? American lives. And that's where the Soviets are going to end up coming in to, open up a second front, mostly on the land in Asia. At that point there, even though you still had, almost, it was 900,000 soldiers on Sakhalin, another 1 million soldiers in China, right? and then millions of soldiers. I think it was 3 million in Japan proper. You know, the atomic bomb kind of completely decimates, okay, the confidence of the Japanese. Because even though they're getting bombed and the American Navy is closer and they lose some of their own territory, Okinawa and Iwo Jima, right? They were still holding on, you know? When that bomb comes up and the ferocity of that weapon, now it opens up a whole different element of warfare. And that's why when we look at Iran today, Iran is not a responsible country. They're, you know, support terrorism, the proxies in the Middle East. They've been a major troublemaker, right? The importance of the nuclear bomb is that we know how powerful it is, right? We don't want countries like Iran getting that, because sooner or later they'll most likely use it, you know? And when you look at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you know, Truman wants to end the war. We're too close now to the Japanese home islands. They're looking at the casualty figures that are most likely going to come in. Now you have more American Marines and Army personnel that are leaving from places like California, going to Hawaii and going across the Pacific Ocean. And the numbers would have been staggering. The Japanese would have lost, but they were training their older populations in how to use like rakes and, you know, pitchforks and primitive weapons on how to kill American soldiers towards their jugular. So you have a nation that is driven by almost like the divinity of the emperor itself, you know, and a fanatical officer corps that just keeps on going. So
I think you mentioned before the show that they were plotting a third bomb.
Yeah, it was a third nuclear bomb. It was somewhere around, what's today's date? Today is the 8th?
I believe so. 10th.
The 10th. So it would have been almost a week from today that they wanted to prepare to ship it out from the United States. So they used Little Man, okay, at Hiroshima. They're going to use Fat Man, or Fat Man and Little Boy. Little Boy at Hiroshima, and then Fat Man at Nagasaki, which was dropped off course. Because they were running out of fuel and they had to come back. And they don't want to land with the atomic bomb, okay? There was attempts to get the third bomb to Tibbets. His was it his 509th, you know, it's not a wing, it's his squadron. It was like 15 B-29 bombers, and all those guys could fly those planes. Almost like, you know, when you put your car on cruise control, you know, because they trained so much that the training was going to take over, because they weren't really quite sure. There was rumors that the Japanese were going to surrender. Then there was rumors that they're going to keep on going. Then you have coup d'etats going on. Then you're not sure with the emperor. Then the emperor puts feelers out. Well, we'll surrender, but I want to keep control. Then with our own, you know, groups here between us, the British, the Chinese, the Soviets, and maybe even the French were thrown in there. You know, there was friction. All right, what do we do? What do we do with this leadership? Because who wants to keep a leadership into power after they just waged war, like we spoke about in previous episodes, right? In China, Thailand, Vietnam, even before Pearl Harbor occurs, there was so much, you know, tenacity amongst that government in killings. So who wants to keep a government like that, okay, in, you know, power, right? And that's what Eisenhower had, was a hard time in Germany, was a lot of those government leaders were Nazis, you know? Patton made a fool out of himself, and he tried to compare, you know, the Germans that he had running his part of Germany to the Democrat and the Republican parties. But you have populations that are so intermingled within the government and the military. Who are you going to get? So there was friction between both sides, you know? And, you know, they were kind of like in a holding pattern. You know, I don't think Truman really wanted to drop the bomb, you know, because after the Trinity test, when that bomb does not go off, there's a great movie called Fat Man and Little Boy when Paul Newman is Leslie Groves. And Paul Newman, I believe he was at Okinawa. He was in the Navy. Okay.
Paul Newman?
Paul Newman was a great actor, one of the finest actors ever, right? So he played Leslie Groves, who was the head engineer, major general, who ends up running the Manhattan Project, especially the security of it. Truman's going to be known as the only president to drop the atomic bomb. Okay, look at Trump. Why does Trump want to attack Iran, right? Why did he want to attack Iran, right? He doesn't want to be known as a president that allows his country, okay, to utilize this weapon or to have it, right? So Truman knew enough about history, okay, after the Trinity test, but, he's a veteran. He's from Middle America. He knows a lot of those soldiers are coming from Middle America, the cities across America, and so on. And, they were planning on another use. And he said, we don't want to do this, but we will until, you get the complete and utter destruction of Japan so they can surrender. And the feelers were put out there, and they just refused. They refused to stop. That was the problem.
Yeah. So there was still fighting going on in the Philippines, I think Borneo, Indochina.
Yeah, well, you still got those Japanese garrisons of soldiers that are in those areas. You get Ho Chi Minh, who I believe was like a waiter or something here in the United States, ends up going back, and he's looking to get rid of the Japanese, right? Vinegar Joe Stilwell, General Stilwell,
commander
Chinese
Chinese
forces.
In China.
I think there was a story where he's thanking like Ho Chi Minh, or one of his generals were thanking him for getting rid of the Japanese, fighting against the Japanese. Wow. And then somebody else said to them, that man's a communist. Because, all right, I take that. Congratulations back, So you had these garrisons of soldiers. You have a communications, a breakdown, of being able to get the word out that we're looking to surrender, lack of transportation, and those places are getting now bombarded because now those internal populations realize that the war is completely going south on the Japanese, and the Japanese propaganda is almost coming to an end, and they can't halt the flow of information against them. So now you get groups of people that are saying, all right, we're willing to risk our lives now because the odds are more favorable to us, and it was like with the Germans, right, in World War II. Those guys became dangerous at the end of World War II because they were getting pushed closer to each other. They were losing so much territory. So they could actually call in reinforcements a lot faster and have almost more soldiers in some areas than Americans. The Japanese, it was like the same case. They were starting to get, attacked from all sides, that sort of thing.
So the Soviets, they invade Manchuria.
They had their high eyes on that. That was their area, and part of the agreements between FDR and Truman was they needed time to shift soldiers from the west to the east. So they're going to have soldiers that are going to go practically from Germany all the way to their far eastern frontier in terms of China and Japan. One of the reasons why the Japanese kept fighting, they did not want to be communist. And they knew that the brutality of the Soviets were almost bringing upon their own blitzkrieg against the Japanese.
I think MacArthur said you can only surrender to nationalist soldiers in China.
It's one of those things. They don't want the communists there. And they understood that. Now, the communists are our friends from most of the war and so on. But at the end of the war, they started realizing we really don't like these guys. And we start looking at a map of them taking over almost half the world's main territories, almost sometimes without even firing a shot, through liberation, because they're going to stay put. So the Soviets were a dangerous element, in the Far East, because now what was their model? Let's gobble up the territory and we're going to stay put.
Yeah.
And we're not going anywhere. So, and the brutality of the war was mostly faced by the American soldiers. Yeah. American, British, Australian, New Zealanders, those guys to a secondary level. But they were there
Chinese.
fighting the Chinese, right? That took a heavy, heavy price. If you look at the casualties of World War II, you'll always see the Soviets because they'll put in their civilian populations, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Some of the first people that died at Auschwitz were Soviet prisoners of war. Yeah. The Poles, right? But you also look at the Chinese, the Vietnamese, the Thai, the Filipinos. I mean, it was just a brutal, brutal war. Whereas the Japanese didn't see those people as equals in any way, shape, or form. They had a brutal look at them as being secondary, as being subhuman, as being subservient to them. And they didn't care. We spoke about the rape of Nanking with blood flowing through the streets and, competitions amongst their soldiers and so on.
Competitions to decapitate people.
Yeah, decapitate. Maybe that's why some of them didn't want to surrender. It's the same thing as Hitler. Who's going to negotiate with us?
Yeah, right.
Who's going to give us anything here? Yeah. Look at our record. Yeah. They know, and we told them, you go after Allied prisoners of war, you're going to pay a price for this here. We're not going to forget it. So it's, it's like I said, it's a very risky time. Paul Tibbets is going to go up with the Enola Gay, named after his mother. His crew could have had blindfolds on their eyes. They could have been blindfolded.
Well, that's not something you want to mess up and hit the wrong place.
No, but they trained so much, and he was seen as one of the finest officers, air officers in Europe. So he's going to come back to the United States. He's going to train. They're going to kind of do the atomic bomb test runs with Los Alamos, when they figure out, all right, this is the size, this is the weight, and so on. And they called it pumpkins in terms of testing. Yeah. And then you have Curtis LeMay, who's always got the cigar in the corner of his mouth. Yeah. And he always got that look, like almost like a Patton has, like, I want to put my head through this wall here, right? Yeah. Very aggressive. Well, he uses those B-29 bombers. They always call that like the $1 billion gamble.
I think it was Curtis who coined the phrase, bomb them back to the Stone Age.
Yeah, and if this war came to an end and we lost, I would have been a war criminal.
Yeah.
Because they were flying actually lower altitude missions and they were firebombing, which they learned from the British in Europe.
Firebombing wooden cities.
Yeah, wooden cities that were just flammable going up. Very little, regular structures. They were there. But you also had that old conservative Japanese building. And LeMay, which is pretty interesting, is the boxcar. When that...
boxcar was the Nagasaki
plane. And they almost got lost over the city. And it was cover, they had a hard time seeing. They dropped it, and that was Fat Man. And it didn't really matter. Let's say if they were supposed to drop the bomb here in Glen Cove, but they dropped it over in Oyster Bay. Yeah. It didn't matter. It was, or Huntington. Yeah. Okay. Or Great
This isn't strategic bombing.
It was going to be felt.
Yeah.
And the losses were that grievous. With Tibbets, it's interesting to note that only one other plane went up with them. Okay. To take pictures. Yeah. And they said that if we send all these planes and support, it's going to force the Japanese, who had limited fuel, to go up there. Yeah. Okay? If we send only 2 planes up there, they're most likely not going to do anything, which is amazing because you had that bomb in there. Yeah. Okay? And, it's going to leave from the island of Tinian. And, we've had, the 50th anniversary of Jaws? Yeah. Right? With Quinn, right? Yeah. Where, they're showing off each other's battle scars in terms of the sharks, right? Yeah. Roy Scheider looks at his little scar, and then he goes, the USS Indianapolis. Yeah. And what was Richard Dreyfuss? Brody? Was not Brody. What was Richard Dreyfuss' character in Jaws there?
Oh, I know this.
In Jaws.
Hooper?
Hooper.
Yeah.
Right? He always yells at him, Hooper, you idiot,
My brother loves that movie. Right? He quotes that all the time.
So it's a great movie, right? And then Hooper goes, you were on Indianapolis. And then Brody goes, well, what's Indianapolis? I was on the ship that dropped the big one. We delivered the bomb.
Yeah.
That gets delivered naval-wise because you can't fly it out. If it gets shot down or if they crash land, and
It's a fictional movie, but that actually happened.
But they believed it was safer, right? And then the USS Indianapolis, it's Captain McVeigh. It was like disgraceful what our own government had done to him. So they go.
I think even the Japanese sub-commander showed up.
Yeah,
He's like, this guy is innocent.
Yeah.
There's nothing he could have done.
There's nothing he could have done. So they bring the bomb to Tinian. It's top secret. Indianapolis now leaves, and that Japanese submarine ends up attacking it. And it was either that he wasn't zigzagging, his men were in the water, and then when Quinn shares that story, there's a lot of truth to that there. And he was Robert Shaw. He grabbed like some scotch or something, and he said, "Give me a couple hours. I'm going to come back." And he was half in the bag, which is probably one of the greatest scenes.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that's like equatable to Gone with the Wind or Shawshank Redemption. You know, is like an unbelievable scene. And he goes, "I'll never wear that life vest," because all those men went into the water. And then he goes, you know, when the planes were coming, that's when I thought I was getting mine. And it was top secret. Those guys were sitting out there, you know. And as they were preparing to drop that bomb, the men were in the water fighting the sharks. So it is, you know, there's a lot of interesting stories from this time period. So,
well, we're out of time here, but thanks, Rich.
All right, good seeing you, Liam.
This has been History Repeats. I'm your host, Liam Carballal, and stay tuned till next time. This is HMTV. Thank you.